What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 41 of the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and co-chair, Michael Liebowitz. He also has an outstanding podcast of his own called The Rational Egoists, so you should check that out as much as possible. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ. I know I say that every week, but I mean it.
You do, but it's true. And tomorrow, we'll have an episode coming out, a discussion with Jim Valiant about logic. I was a little late to getting to you because I was arguing with Jim Valiant, the same argument I had with you yesterday. So now I'm absolutely convinced you two are working in cahoots. Jim told me as much.
Yes.
So I just have to live with it. That's going to have to be the nature of things, I guess.
The check is in the mail, James. Thank you very much. Today, you know what? I think we're going to focus a little bit on psychology and the intersection of philosophy and psychology and the appropriate outlook, I think, for people to have if they want to live a happy and successful life. Now, I also want to contrast this, by the way, with another social, economic, and political system out there that is our exact rival, the American Communist Party and the communist.
No,
I do. Sorry, I have to bring it back to capitalism at some point, right? So I want to talk about the two different ways of looking at the world. Of course, there's a variety of different ways of looking at the world, but we're going to deal with two at the moment, and how one lends itself to communism and the other lends itself to capitalism. That's going to be the sort of integration that with capitalism. But you sent me an article, I think it was yesterday, not today's articles, from Psychology Today, that I found very, very important. And I want to preface this by saying, I think it's important because we live in an age that has, one, distanced itself from reason as a means of knowing, two, embraced emotionalism as a tool of cognition, which is, as Ayn Rand showed us, it's not a tool of cognition. It's certainly clues as to what you value and certainly clues to what's going on internally. They should not be ignored or repressed. You have to understand what they're telling you. They're information, but they're not necessarily tools of cognition. But we live in a world now that believes that they are, and that reason is something to be suspicious of. So we live in an emotionalized world. As a result, we've turned out children and generations of children now that are filled with anxiety, filled with misgivings. Their parents are trying to protect them from emotional slights and problems and from trauma. The problem is that life is rather hard for pretty much everybody. Life nicks you, it bruises you, it cuts you, it beats you up. Life pushes against you. It applies pressure to you. It pushes back. Now, you can either give in to that pressure and look at life as a insurmountable obstacle that you can never overcome, or you can be anti-fragile or resilient, and you could take these obstacles that are coming into your life and turn them into positives. You can turn those frowns upside down, Michael. Did you know that?
I do. And for the audience, I just texted. I posted the article to X.
Oh, so you posted it to X, but you don't have the technical prowess to post it on this particular site, is what you're saying.
That'll drive me crazy. So I just posted to X, and as you go to each article, I'll post it to X.
Yes, and I posted it to a couple of people also who are going through some pretty intense things, and I think they needed the emotional and intellectual boost to know that it's possible for them to look at the positives and to turn extreme negatives into positives for their lives. It's super hard when you're going through pain. It's super hard to see outside of that. It's super hard that you see that you are still a volitional being who has choice. You can choose to say, woe is me, or you can choose to say, I'm going to take this challenge and I'm going to make myself better for it. Of course, a couple of the examples in the article were high degree challenges. We're talking about people who were paralyzed and loved basketball, but decided to turn that around and plays basketball from a wheelchair. People who were devastated in hurricanes, who didn't sit there and wonder, why did God do this to me? Why did nature attack me? Why did they destroy me? They just began to rebuild. Now, of course, you're going to mourn the loss of things, and you should mourn the loss of things, but you should also practice resilience, practice exercising your choice, and practice understanding that you can move forward despite the things that life is throwing in your way. I think this is a very capitalistic idea. What say you?
Um, it depends what you mean. Ultimately, I think that freedom ultimately entails being responsible, individual responsibility. And individual responsibility entails being resilient. Because as you said, life can be tough, right? It doesn't matter. We talked about this, I think, yesterday. It doesn't matter how good you are. Bad things can happen to you. Things that you don't deserve, things that you didn't ask for, didn't want. It just happens. And you have to be resilient. You have to be strong and overcome. You can't look to the government, as the commie here in the comments says he's talking about bailouts. But if every time you have a hard time or bad things happen, you're going to the government to bail you out, it's not resilient and it's not capitalism. So if that's what you're talking about, Mark, I agree with you 100%.
Well, the reason I say that is because I think capitalism understands that the world is a dynamic place. It allows for human dynamicism and innovation. This creates a situation that we in the capitalist world call creative destruction, where old jobs are pushed aside because new technology unemploys those folks who are in those old jobs, and it compels those people to either do one of two things: sit in the Rust Belt and wonder why the factories went away to China, or move and figure out what to do with their lives. Now, there's already a movement going on right now because AI. There's a projection in another article that you sent me about AI is soon to unemploy a bunch of white collar workers, and they're saying that there's going to be 10 to 20% unemployment. Of course, this sounds tragic right now, but we understand that these forecasts don't admit of future innovations that come along that take up those jobs. But nonetheless, the idea that this kind of unemployment and what the person who's creating this AI technology posits is, well, maybe we could use, the extra funds that we make to create a fund for government for these people who are immediately unemployed. In other words, the same old kind of thing that we've previously been doing, which is not encouraging people to innovate and find ways of dealing with the hardship in their life or the new changes in their life. There's a guy named Mike Rowe out there who does a show called Dirty Jobs.
Yeah.
He's already been out on the New York Post and already been on Fox News talking about how Generation Z is already anticipating that AI is probably going to make some of their jobs obsolete. And so what they're doing is they're training for technical positions that AI can't at this point do anything about. And what are they doing? Women are becoming welders and making mid six figures a year. I mean, these jobs are in high demand. And these Gen Zers are saying, no, I don't need the 4 years of college that you told me I needed. Actually, it's turning out people who are baristas with $120,000 of debt and a useless degree. I want something that I could use in the world. And so they're reverting back to shop, and they're learning in technical schools to actually become proficient at something in life. And this is a magnificent adjustment. It's what I look to when I see resilience. At one time, when things were difficult in one part of the country, people simply migrated to another part of the country to find opportunities. They do that all over the world as well. When they're allowed to, when they're free to, they go from a worse place to a better place. And they do that to look for and take advantage of opportunities. That's called resilience, folks. That's called strength orientation. That doesn't mean that you deny or repress feelings. It means that you are oriented towards the fact that you are, to a great degree, in control of your responses to the world and what the world gives you. That is capitalistic, as opposed to the communistic concept that you're determined by your class, that there's really no breaking out of this determinism, that forces of production it put our culture in a unbreakable contradiction that will cause unrest and inequality and unequal distribution of wealth. And these things are insolvable problems except through violent revolution. None of that makes any sense. None of those problems are unsolvable problems. as long as you focus on the idea that you are a volitional being, that you have the strength and power to take control of your life and to change course when necessary. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, of course I agree.
I mean, you're a prime example of this to me.
I mean, I do like. You ever hear the what's the thing? The carpenter who, when he has a hammer, everything's a nail. How you were able to take the article I sent you from Psychology Today on resilience and bring it back and tie it to the commies, that was impressive.
I find them to be highly fragile people.
But ultimately, you're right. I mean, what communism and all, the nanny state, the welfare state is, they rob people of their resilience. They rob people of their agency. They want people to be dependent. They want people to be puppets on strings rather than free people that, yes, with freedom comes risk. But I've said it many, many times to people when I was in prison. I'd rather be free sleeping under a bridge than be in that jail cell nice and warm with my television. Anytime, any day of the week.
Amen. Ashley Shrugged is telling everybody to please hit the like button. Please do hit the like button, because resiliency, strength orientation, independence, moral agency, all of these things need to be the messages out there that our culture gets and that become mainstream as opposed to the fringe. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at everything here. I'm laughing at what's happening here in the chat. I'm laughing at the whole idea that commies are dumb. It's just.
I think they're fragile, and they see the world as deterministic, and they see human beings as deterministic. It's at once elitist and condescending, and degrading to human nature to view people as they do, and to view themselves as the potential saviors of those people. They think that because they can force supplies of materials out of some people's hands and redistribute them to others, that somehow makes for human dignity. That's not how human dignity happens, folks. That's not. Self-esteem isn't tied to you getting stuff, especially somebody giving you stuff by no account of your own. Self-esteem is tied to what you do in the world and how you do it, how successfully you navigate the problems of the world. That may not necessarily lead to material success, but it could lead to success in all kinds of different venues of your life. So look, you can give a poor person $1 million, it's not going to make them happier. But once they start working for it and earning, they can earn $500 and be far happier than being given $1 million. Trust me. That's the way I felt when I got my first paycheck. When I got my first paycheck, I was proud as heck, and I was probably earning $3.50 an hour. I don't even remember what the quote unquote minimum wage was back then. It was small. It was a small paycheck.
Back in the 50s, it was probably 50 cents. I'm going to say.
Thank you for that. So you're getting back at me because you think I'm in collusion with James Valiant.
You are, and he's in the chat. But I got a great quote here from the Sage of Baltimore.
Okay.
One H.L. Mencken, and it's: the urge to save humanity is almost always only a false face for those, or for the urge to rule it.
Yeah, Mencken
power is what messiahs really seek.
Yeah, I love that. I got to put that up on the American Communist Party website and torment them with that one for a while, because they can't beat Mencken. Almost nobody can beat that. No,
Mencken's phenomenal.
He was phenomenal. So I wanted to talk about that resiliency a little bit. Do you have anything more to say about it? Because it's going to go right into another article that you gave me today entitled "Stop Telling Kids the World is a Terrible Place."
I actually have a lot to say about resiliency.
Okay.
Oh gosh, the problem is I don't like to make the show about, or any of my shows about me. Sometimes it's necessary. So my whole life, I'll just give you a very compressed vision. My whole life, I thought my mother would die. But my mother, when I was a kid, she overdosed a couple times. I saw her get beat very savagely. There was a lot of violence around my house, so I always was afraid that my mother would die. I projected this fear onto my relationships with girls, with friends. I wanted to control people, always trying to make it so that people would not leave me. And ultimately, you can't do that. And when I, eventually I came to the conclusion that this was a serious issue for me. For anybody who's familiar with attachment style, I had an anxious ambivalent attachment style. So you can look that up and, you can get it. And as I'm working through this whole thing, psychologically teaching myself to not fear loss, to overcome it, to be okay. During all this, my mother committed suicide. And I was hit, like, it's that thing we talked about, that just because you're trying to do right doesn't mean the world is now going to kiss your ass. Bad things still happen. So I said, I had a choice. My choice is either crumble or grow. I chose to grow. And I said, well, how can I grow? And what I told myself, and it was actually true, was that I always feared my mother would die and thought I couldn't take it. But then she committed suicide, which is the ultimate abandonment. And yet I was still standing. And the fact that I was still standing told me I can keep going, right? If I'm still standing from this, I can take anything in life. Now, I thought that my mother's death was the worst thing that I could ever experience. And then, and as you know, you were there with me, my girlfriend died from lung cancer. And that was volumes worse than when my mother died. That like ripped my soul out of me. But Melissa, my girlfriend told me, when she had cancer, and I was taking care of her and I was taking care of her son. And she told me, you have to keep going. You have to keep doing your show. You have to go out. I don't want your whole life to become about my illness. And so I would go and I would still do recordings, and it was hard. I didn't feel like doing it at all, especially not, once she died, I felt like doing nothing. But then it occurred to me, if I'm ever going to make something of myself, and I promised her, when I make it in this world, your son will never want for anything. And it just occurred to me, as I'm not feeling like doing anything but sitting back and feeling sorry for myself, that unless I actually do things, unless I keep going, unless I do make something of myself, I can't keep that promise to her. So I used it again to grow from. Painful, yes, but life is painful and there's no way around it. And ultimately we all end up in the same place. But what are we going to do while we're here? Are we going to crumble when things go wrong? Are we going to turn violent like I did when I was, a teenager and in my 20s, and rebel against the world and try to hurt everybody that, I think needs to be hurt? Or are we going to grow, be resilient, persevere, set goals, and ultimately go and achieve the goals that we want? And to me, it's an obvious answer. Not easy, but it's what we need to do.
Yeah, I think people have to get over the idea that when you are working virtuously like that, that somehow there should be no conflict involved. No, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be you're going to be torn in many ways. You're going to be emotionally torn. I'll give you an example, a perfect example. Recently just happened. So one of the professors at the academy, at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, super, super, super tough guy. I mean, notoriously tough guy. His dog just passed, and he missed the class because they had to put the dog down. And when he came back, he's like, I really never thought that this would hit me like this. I've seen other people's get upset about their dogs passing, but I never thought that this would affect me the way it did. I'm really having a hard time. He's like, I said, I got to tell you, when I heard your dog passed, I cried like in the hallway at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, because I've been feeling this for the last 6 years. Anybody who has an elderly animal, especially mine, who's sitting over there right now, 18 and a half years old. It's like every moment you're there with them is a blessed moment, right? And I tell him that every day and night, whether he understands me or not, I tell him how blessed I am to have him in my life. I still don't know how I'm going to react when the inevitable happens. I think it's going to devastate me totally. But what I told Mark is, regardless of how you feel, you just keep coming and train. Just keep coming in to teach. Just keep coming to train. And I could see the tears in this guy's eyes, who's tough as nails. He's like a scary, tough guy, but his eyes welling up. for this loss in his life. And I know I'm going to be the same way. And I may be in the middle of a role crying my eyes out, but I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there because life matters. It's like Rand was asked by Phil Donahue in her second interview. She had just lost her husband. And he said, well, how do you feel? You know, what's going on with you? She said, it's the most devastating loss of my life. He was the most important value in my life. But I love life more. I love life enough to be here and to do this. And so I'm going to continue to persevere and live. But that doesn't mean without pain, folks. So don't think that because you make these decisions to be resilient, you choose to be strong over weak, that the pain goes away. It doesn't. It's going to be there. It's going to be there, and it's going to assert itself sometimes, but you choose life.
You do. I want to talk about something that affects me almost on a daily basis. We have this guy, Gussie. He's in the chat here, and he's making wretched comments, and people are pointing out to him that he's a wretched human being. But I have so much experience in life with this. And the thing is, and this always is in the back of my head, right? And I told someone this the other day. People talk like this asshole because, and this goes kind of what you're saying yesterday, when they know they can get away with it. And that's fine. You can get away with it. They're just words. I understand that. But there was a time in my life when dudes like this would never, ever have spoken to me like that. Ever. And if they did, it would have been once. And the fact that I'm able now to not, like, we're being told to just block him. He can just make another fake name and come back. I'm not doing all that. But the fact that I'm able to deal with it now and just like, whatever, you know what I mean? Who cares? The guy's a moron. He can be a scumbag, and that's fine. It's growth for me. But at the same time, I have a very low opinion of the people who do that, of the people who get on the internet with fake names and they harass people and they insult people and they just make despicable comments. I mean, these are just
losers.
Yeah, but there's something especially cowardly about it.
Yeah,
it's very, very.
It's a unique form of sadism that social media has produced that excites the cowardly sadist, the guy who wouldn't go out in life and torment somebody because he knows there's consequences to that. Like somebody might turn around and break his jaw or choke him out. But in this case, he can get away with it, so he does it. So it's a perverse kind of sadist, a unique kind of coward, probably wears women's underwear. It's all right, Gussie. We know what you're all about. He's also telling a story. He's also telling a story about because capitalism abandoning some people. No, capitalism doesn't abandon people. Capitalism can't abandon people, but people can abandon themselves. And the friends of people can abandon those people who need help. But capitalism is not responsible for that, folks. And you certainly don't need to impose rules from above on people, moral duties that deprive them of their choice and moral agency, so that Gussie's preferences can be fulfilled.
You know, one day, Mark, I want to have, we can do a show, and I want to have a topic: the rise of the pseudo tough guy.
Yeah,
because I've seen it, and it seems like this maybe started with Trump, but I don't know because, you know, like I said, I was incarcerated. I don't know what was going on out here, but it seems to be there's so many of these guys like on X or what they call themselves alphas. A lot of them kiss Trump's ass on a daily basis, and I'm just like, yeah, nothing screams alpha like licking another man's boots.
No, not only that. But nothing screams alpha like calling yourself an alpha. Yeah. You don't have to call yourself an alpha. If you're an alpha, you walk into the room and people know it. I'm sorry, they just know it. You step on the mat, people know you're the fucking alpha. You don't have to announce it. When Jean-Jacques Machado comes onto the mat, everybody knows who the king of the room is. So if you're screaming alpha, like what's that douchebag's name? You know, the guy who's been accused of sex trafficking and was in Romania for a long time, Tate.
He goes around telling everybody how tough he is, how masculine he is,
how bad he is, how jiu-jitsu doesn't work in real life, all that stuff. That guy is probably the biggest poontang on the face of the earth, and he can fight. There's no question about it. He's had lots of professional fights, but
Has he? Andrew Tate?
Yeah. He's had about
I didn't even know that.
He's had 50 professional fights. He knows how to use his hands. He's pretty handy out there. But the fact that he talks the way he does, with his overt misogyny and anti-life, hatred, his braggadocio, his dependence on status and material gain, all of that bespeaks a man with a very tiny penis inside, even if he doesn't have it outside. Anyway, and speaking of tiny penises, I haven't seen Gussie talk for a while, so let's go on. Let's go on with something a little bit more productive.
I had something to say. Now I forgot what it was.
So stop telling kids the world is a terrible place. Now, look, this seems to be, despite Pinker's great book that demonstrates that we are in the least violent times in history. We are actually it is the best time to be alive right now in the 21st century. Even an article in the Post recently said that we are on track for 2025 for having the least murders in the history of America, okay, in 2025. You'd never know that if you listen to Republican news stations where everything is about insane immigrants chopping people up and throwing them in front of trains. You'd never know that if you were probably in a classroom today and listening to how the power structures oppress everybody and keep you down, and how various intersectionalities are oppressed, and how all the language you get about morality is informed by the class that's pushing you down, and the only way you can get out from under that oppression is to destroy that class. We hear nothing but violence, and that it's almost ingrained constitutionally in the human psyche to be violent and horrible, and that we live in a dangerous world. Well, the fact is, folks, we don't. We actually don't. In America, we live probably in the safest place the world has ever known. Now, of course, we hear of the mass shootings, and we hear of all these crazy things that are happening that make headlines, right? Because if it bleeds, it leads. And it makes us feel that generally that's the way things are, but it's not. And look, you cannot be telling your children that it is in the name of truth. Now, this article pointed out something called primal beliefs, which Rand already, I think, tapped in the 60s when she talked about sense of life. And one of the reasons I think these kids are turning out so anxious and so psychologically abused and so tormented and so agitated that they feel like they have to take action against everything and everyone that offends them is because they've been implanted from a very early age this sense of life that the world, the universe, the place they live is a malignant universe. And they're constantly on the defensive to fight against the malignancy. Now, Rand talked about how difficult it was to change your sense of life. I think you and I are examples of people who probably grew up with a pretty shitty sense of life, given our origins, given the violence of our origins, the things that we had to witness as we were growing up. And yet we were able to change that. That doesn't mean it's still not there in some residual effect that we have to have conscious control of it. But philosophy helped us to overcome that, helped us to, first, the desire to change and grow, and the realization that what we were doing was not productive or good for us, that was harming other people. But then philosophy came and helped us to organize our thoughts in such a way as to lead us down the right direction and make good action more habitual than the bad action. What do you think about this? These kids being told that the world is a horrible place. We're built on colonialism and stolen land, and everything is about murder and destruction and debasement of human souls. What do you think of this?
I'm very pleased that you thought of sense of life too, because that's exactly what I thought about as I read this, and I think it's important to teach the truth, but there's a lot of truths. Like I remember reading Howard Zinn's book, for instance, The People's History of the United States. And, it was true. The problem is it's a matter of what you're going to put emphasis on, right? What are you going to emphasize about history? Are you going to emphasize that there was slavery in America and there was a lot of bad things that happened in America? are you going to emphasize the thriving human spirit that, basically enthrall the constitutional republic with all kinds of guaranteed freedoms and born of ideals that ultimately overcame slavery, overcame Jim Crow, continues to overcome these things? So you can be honest, but what these folks seem to do is they just focus on the bad. No, America's colonialist. America is racist. America had slavery. America's oppressive, sexist, whatever. And I think that they do that to these kids. Not only that, but the world is polluted. They don't tell them that it's far less polluted than it was 100 years ago. They just tell them global warming, it's coming to an end. And I think that can potentially have a devastating effect on a kid's psyche. Now, I'm not a determinist, so the kid can overcome it. But the more you do that to a kid, the harder it is to overcome. I banned Gussie, folks, that people are asking. I did it because he's just here to troll, and I have no interest in that.
I was fond of beating up on Gussie. I like guys like that because you need contrast, I think, to learn.
I love contrast, and if he was here making points, I would be fine. But just making dumb comments, it's like the kid in the back of the room making fart sounds. Like I'm over it. I don't need that in my life.
Yeah, Gussie was definitely low level. Yeah, I think also what they're being taught is they're not being taught a full context. So they'll be taught the truth. Yes, slavery existed in America, but what context does that exist in? It existed in a worldwide context of systemic slavery around the world. There wasn't a culture on the face of the earth that didn't engage in this kind of action, including Mesoamericans, in Neolithic times, before a single European had landed on the continents of South or North America. These kinds of things were happening. It was part of the human condition that we had to understand at some point in life, once the knowledge became available to us, that it was wrong to do. And even now, the Declaration of Independence has happened, and Ayn Rand has happened, and we understand the nature of rights. There are still more slaves today in various parts of the world than ever existed at any time in history. So there are still people who refuse to acknowledge the concept that rights are real, including the guy you had the debate with, who doesn't understand the concept of rights, and who just thinks that if you have enough power, then you are the one who determines what happens to anybody. So yeah, unfortunately, folks, human beings have to learn everything, and there's not a people on the planet, not a racial group that hasn't been suppressed or repressed or oppressed. Not a single one that hasn't experienced violence, genocide, massacre, political destruction, dark ages, complete loss of knowledge, and then regaining knowledge. I mean, all of this has happened to the entirety of the world. What makes America unique is that it codified explicit language that protects the individual from the use of violence. And that's the first real time in history that's happened, that individual rights were put in law and that the group was restrained. They were subordinated by moral law, and the individual was free to do as he chose. That's the capitalist system, the opposite of what communism is, by the way.
Have you ever read Steve Hicks' book, Professor Stephen Hicks' book, Postmodernism Explained? They're explaining postmodernism.
Yeah.
Great book. And in there, he made an observation that hit me hard. I read the book, I don't know, 20 years.
Actually, I saw a couple of lectures from him on postmodernism. I don't think I read the book.
But he makes the point, he says, people criticize the West for, oppressing women, for homophobia, racism. He says, but the fact of the matter is, it's precisely Western ideas and Western ideals that overcome these things.
Exactly.
And he made the point that the people who propagate this stuff about how horrible Western values are, they know this. They have to know it. They're educated people. They're professors, right? They have to know that the West is where this stuff goes to die. The West did not originate this stuff. The West ends it. And so I think that's important to keep in mind.
So the question would be, why do these Western academics, who have to know that these issues are universal and that the West is really the only culture that takes them on, challenges them, and then changes them, why it is they propagate the idea that the West is the originator of these things?
I don't know. Ultimately, it seems like they must just want to subvert ideas that they don't think hold up to their moral vision, which is not a good moral vision. That's the only thing I can think, but I ultimately don't know what motivates such people.
I think Mises, posed some thoughts on that with respect to academia, their self-esteem, and feeling slighted in a capitalist world. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know that it was actually exactly as spot on a psychological evaluation as Rand would give, but it seems that there seems to be something there. What you have is an envious community that values that values itself more highly than the world does. And to some degree, since they also rub elbows with the people who are successful in the world, there's a degree of envy there, and they act on that envy. But that's a Misesian evaluation. I haven't really done any deep exploring into the matter.
In the anti-capitalist mentality, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that he made a point that they believe that their intellect is so bright and that they are, contributing so much to society that they can't come to grips with the fact that a lowly actor, or athlete makes so much more money than they do. They feel that they should be the ones rewarded. I think that's what Mises said. If he didn't, someone did, because I read it somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's in the anti-capitalist mentality.
That's exactly what it's in. Akira Felix says, "You got to bring up the N-word. It's because intellectuals are nihilists." It seems like that's exactly what they've become. Speaking of nihilists, I want to talk about this Texas state representative advocating for segregated classrooms. Now, she had this is posted on X from Carlos Turclos, and she's interviewing somebody. I don't know who the person she's interviewing is, and she's trying to make the case that black kids learn more from black teachers and white kids learn more from white teachers. And this parent is either a parent or some kind of representative of some organization, says, well, actually, my kid's favorite teacher is Hispanic, and he learns more from him than any other teacher there. So I don't think race has anything to do with it. What do you think? This has been going on for quite some time now. This call for segregation, but now from the African American community, where it's not the African American community as a whole, but the elites, the race hucksters, the people in politics, the people who are trying to drive the conversation where it doesn't need to go anymore. These are the people advocating for segregation and making these claims for studies, which he said, are you aware that this study exists? He said, yes, I'm also aware of other studies that show it's not true. So right. What do you make of this kind of overt racism in the Texas state representative?
Well, first, Nicole Hingle in the chat says, I saw that today. Yes, Nicole, I know you did, because I got it from you and sent it to Mark. So I know you saw it today. But I've actually dealt with this quite a bit as somebody who in prison was sort of a counselor, rehabilitation counselor, other inmates. And I was often told, oh, but you're white, they're not going to listen to you. You can't have the same effect because you're white. Or, there's this idea. And part of it, let me just say, is rooted in truth, right? I remember in my intro to psychology course, or maybe it was social psychology, there was a picture of pantyhose, and it said, they had the various colors of pantyhose, and this one said nude, and it was clearly Caucasian colors. And the white lady says, wow, it's amazing how there's such subtle racism. And the black lady in the cartoon says subtle, right? So I think that there is something to when if you're a black kid growing up in America, not so much anymore, but you know, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and you put on TV and you see your superhero and it's Superman is white, Batman is white, Robin is white, James Bond is white. All the great people on TV are all white. I think that that can have a negative impact on a kid. Now, I think that they've now stretched that uh, beyond belief to the idea that they have to see that somebody's teaching that's black. They need to learn from somebody that looks like them. Or you could see this even in the philosophy of Alcoholics Anonymous, for instance, where they say, it's best to have a sponsor, and the sponsor has to be an alcoholic too, so that he can relate and empathize. So it's not just in the areas of race that this takes place, this sort of dynamic. And I think that it's takes a modicum of truth and it expands it to where it doesn't apply, because it's absolutely ridiculous to think that you have to have the kids in class learning from somebody that's of the same race.
I think there's something to say about Hollywood sort of typifying stereotypes, and placing Hispanics in gangs or blacks as criminals. There is something culturally to that, and that is demoralizing, I think, to somebody looking at this. It's demoralizing to white people too, who can form stereotypical images of these people in their minds based on what they're seeing in the cinema. And the fact that we've broken out of that, not necessarily in the healthiest of ways through DEI, but now seeing women in powerful heroic roles, black and Hispanic people and people of color in heroic roles, I think is a very good thing. I do think it's good for people to see representations of themselves positively represented in the culture. But that's a different thing from saying I can only learn from a person who's white. If that's the case, then I didn't learn from Glenn Lowry, Jonathan McWhorter, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell, Jason Riley, all the great black intellectuals who have taught me something. Shelby Steele. These people taught me something because they're wise. They're great integrators of knowledge, far, far wiser and more intelligent than I. And they made me smarter reading them. I guess that was all an illusion because they're black after all, and I'm white.
You could not learn from them. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that this Texas representative should probably be voted out of office. I'm hoping that the people see this ridiculous racist screed and get her the fuck out. What do you say to that?
I hope you're right. Akira Felix says at this point, the left is going to have an actual MS-13 officer to teach Salvadorian kids to follow their culture. Oy vey.
They've reached that level of craziness on the left. It's I don't think you could write a story like this for film and it would be believable, but we're getting there. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. Behind the curtain, a white collar bloodbath. I think there's a lot of commies who would probably like the fact that the invention of AI is probably going to unseat a lot of CEOs and top level engineers. Since they think that the worker is the grunt, is the guy that makes the world go round, not anybody at the top who organizes capital. These people are just numbnuts. They don't produce any value at all.
They're leeches and parasites.
Leeches and parasites. So I'm sure they're very happy that this coming white collar bloodbath is going to happen. But what do you think about this? I mean, do you think that AI is going to, one, cause mass unemployment? Two, if it does, is it going to be disturbing to the economy? Will it be offset by the great benefits that AI is going to bring? And three, will those great benefits then in turn develop industries and jobs that we could have never conceived of in a million years, at least not now? What say you?
I first of all just want to stress my utter ignorance on the cutting edge developments in AI. I don't know. What I do know is that the doomsayers throughout history have a very bad track record, whether it be, a given job, you're going to displace people. We're going to lead to mass unemployment. They're going to be starving, or the environment where, we're going to have famines everywhere. We're going to have an ice age. Global warming is going to wipe us out, whatever. They have a very bad track record. So when people come out with claims like this, my default position is skepticism of what they're saying. But of course, that doesn't mean it can't happen. But Jim Valiant says Luddites, yes. But I'm in the camp that even if it were to happen, this goes back to resilience, right? Human beings are resilient, especially if you don't try to baby them and to protect them from all consequences. And I think that we don't know what industries are going to pop up that are going to absorb these workers. We have no clue what might come about. And that is my guess, is that if this is indeed true, which I'm very skeptical that it is, that AI is going to lead to mass unemployment amongst mid-level white-collar workers, I think we're going to see more development. We're going to see growth, new industries, things that we can't even imagine at this point in time. That's what I think is likely to happen.
That is exactly what has happened in the past, and we're not.
Right.
It's not any different because AI is an extreme technology. All technological advancement has temporarily unemployed some sectors of the economy and has ultimately added far more than it has taken away. Far more. I mean, certainly the car did bad things to the horse and buggy industry and to all the ancillary industries, blacksmithing, horseshoeing, all the industries that went along with horse and buggies were suddenly out of a job. And blacksmithing at one time was a job that was considered one of those technical things that could never ever go away, and yet it did. And are we better or worse off for that? Yeah. I think we're better.
I do too. Greg Doherty says here, the scary aspect to AI, where'd he go, is the possibility of government regulating it. And I was actually going to give the caveat to what I said was this type of dynamic growth will happen unless the government decides to start restricting it, putting barriers to entry, and you need license to do this and permission to do that and permits to, to do whatever,
which they will, they will.
But that can hinder it. Thus far in America, we've been able to overcome it.
And right? You know why? Because right now Trump is worried about competition with China, and he wants to stay in the race with them. He wants to beat them, and so he's letting the AI technicians do what they do until it becomes inconvenient for him not to do that. I have full confidence that the Republican Party will somehow be a hindrance to AI technology, just like they were a hindrance to stem cell technology, just like they're a hindrance to other forms of advancement in the world. Just like
wait a second, hold on. The Republicans are the small government party. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
really, they aren't. But you know who is the limited government party?
I do, as a matter of fact, know who that is. That's the American Capitalist Party, folks. AmericanCapitalistParty.org. Go to the site, join up, donate, become a member, be the change, and also hit the like button before you get off. Gussie, I know he pulled up his Victoria's Secrets and hit the like button before he was summarily kicked off. And he will come on in another identity.
I'm sure he will. And I hate to do that, by the way. I don't want to block people, but I can start to see that he's interfering with the other people. And I want the people in the chat to have a good experience as well. And being trolled just isn't that.
So yeah, he's the drunk guy you got to kick out of the party, unfortunately.
Yes,
because he's pulling his pants down in front of people and doing unusual things. Deeper with Diego, I don't understand your comment there. I'd love you to explain that, or maybe Michael, you can. It says, Mark, please, you can't do that. It's 2025. Calling a black intellectual, steal. Voice to text sucks sometimes. I guess I'm not supposed to call a black an intellectual in 2025.
I think you're not supposed to culturally appropriate them. I don't really know. I'm not sure.
I'm going to appropriate as much as Thomas Sowell as I possibly can, as much as of Walter Williams as I can, as much as Glenn Loury as I possibly can, because they're super smart. So I'm going to steal everything that they think. I won't make it my own, because I will give them due credit where credit is due, where their credit is due. But I'm definitely going to take it and use it for my own personal growth.
Oh, we have a candidate running for local office this year.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, in fact, we do. Should we talk about that? Or
you can, but first tell everybody to hit the like button.
Yeah, but before folks, before you do anything else, hit the like button. The algorithms seem to like that. But now, what are we going to call our candidate? Is it going to be Alex or Alan? Is he running as Alan Thomas?
Oh no, not this. We got a real controversy.
Ariana, is he running as Ariana? Is he running as Alan Thomas?
I believe it's Ariana.
I said Ariana.
No, you said Ariana.
Oh, Ari. Okay, I said Ariana.
Yeah, and it's Alan that's running. Well,
it's Alan Thomas.
Yeah, she has a confusing name, the spelling, and he comes with different names, so it makes it all very confusing.
Yes, Alan is running for city council in Alabama. And what's the city exactly, Ariana, that he's running in? And he will be the first capitalist party candidate to run in an election. Oh. We're looking forward to this. What does it say? Ariana. It's pronounced.
She says it's Ariana.
So I was right.
You were, but the funny thing is, I was wrong. But not only was I wrong, but you said no. I did say Ariana.
So I doubled down. Okay, so in Argo, he's running in Argo for city council. He's a super smart dude. I think he's probably just one brain cell. I think he can outdo everybody in the council there. Not to alienate the city council of Argo, but they would do better to have an American Capitalist Party member on their board. And that's, folks, the step one towards the American Capitalist Party moving up in the world. We intend on taking over, which means what? What does it mean? When the communists say they're taking over, they're really taking over. They're stealing moral agency from other people. They're stealing their property and doing what they want with it. When we take over, that means we're giving you the keys to the kingdom. We're saying all we do here is sit here and guard the kingdom. We let you do in the kingdom what you want, provided you're not hurting anybody else. I call that a good deal. I don't know about you, but I think that's a great deal.
It's great. Just don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Work for a living.
So, work for a living, folks. Although the communists would say, well, Marx said that if you don't work, you don't eat.
That's true. But the problem is that they think that unless you're, driving a screw, you're not working. I had a boss one time, and this guy didn't understand that I was in a wood shop, and he didn't understand that when you're building stuff, you actually have to prep first. And that entails thinking through, doing the calculations, making the plans. He just thought if you weren't, driving a nail into the wood, you must not be working.
Yeah, they don't. The communists have issues with, I think, conceptualization anyway. They're very concrete bound, like a lot of anarchists are. So they don't understand that the tremendous mental effort it takes to organize capital. They don't think of that at all. They think the CEO just gets there, sits in a seat, does nothing but get manicures, pedicures, and facials, and gets rich off of exploiting the labor of others. But usually a CEO is working somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 hours a week. They never go to sleep. A company's owner, folks, never has downtime. You just have to know that. Small business owners know that. They go home, they're dealing with the problems of the small business. You just have an hourly wage. After 8 hours, you go home. You don't even have to think about what the fuck is going on in your company. But that is not the case with the CEO or the company owner. They are thinking about it 24/7. And in order to keep their company competitive, they have to keep thinking of innovative ways to cut costs, innovative ways to bring better products to market so that they can keep you interested in them. Otherwise, they lose it. They lose their market share. They fall behind. That's what capitalism does, as opposed to communism that seems to entrench and institutionalize mediocrity. And it incentivizes non-innovation. It incentivizes, as Rand said in her great essay, the right to mediocrity, the God-given right to, Ambassador, help me please, Michael.
No. Keep trying. I think it's first of all, it's Nathaniel Brandon's article. It's in The Virtue of Selfishness. It's the divine right of stagnation.
The divine right of
stagnation. But hey, I like yours too, man. The right to mediocrity. We could roll with that.
I like the divine right of stagnation better than Nathaniel Brendan said it better than I. That's right. I think communism incentivizes stagnation. Capitalism incentivizes growth, movement, change. All the things that we see in life are represented by capitalism. They're reflected in the capitalist movement. So we are a life-centered, life-forward party that conforms to human nature and the laws of economics. We do not try to resist what is actual, folks.
Have you ever seen Dana White talk about that, where he said it makes him laugh when people say, you know, they want to work for themselves because they make their own hours? He said, no, the hell you don't.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, you don't. You want to work for yourself. That means you're going to be working 100, 120 hours a week. You're going to be working a lot. My wife knows this because she started an acting school in Paris, and I don't know anybody who works harder. I mean, literally 13, 14 hours a day. Not only dealing with government bureaucracy to get her visa, her talent visa, her artist visa, and then to become an auto entrepreneur over there. And then to think of curriculum and to dream up curriculum and classes that interest people in Paris. She's now becoming, I think, one of the top people in Paris for teaching Meisner, and will become the top person, I believe. She's been invited to a symposium about introducing the Meisner technique to people in Paris. And she's going to speak about the Meisner technique. And I venture to say she's probably the only person in that panel who actually knew Meisner and knows Meisner. So I think she's going to dominate the market there. But it doesn't come without costs, folks. She works 12 hours a day doing it, man. So awesome. Hats off to her. Communism is when factory, divine right of stagnation. Thank you, Diego. You corrected me as well as Michael, but Michael liked to see me hanging out. It was fun.
I think it made for good television.
Is that what it did?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm glad.
I could be wrong. I gotta tell you, I'm real sluggish today. I'm wicked tired. And
no, you hung me out to dry.
No. But it's hard for me to tell what good television is, because internally I'm like, oh, but out here I'm like. So it's hard for me to really assess things. So I took a shot and I let you squirm, hoping the audience would appreciate it.
I think they did. I think people appreciate squirming. That just shows how sadistic and fallen we are as a culture. No, I'm kidding. So I think it's time for the capitalist thought of the day, Michael. And I think it's your turn.
No, I did it yesterday. It's not my turn.
I think it's your turn because you intentionally hurt my feelings.
Well, maybe you can do a capitalist thought of the day that has to do with hurt feelings.
Yes, I will. Okay, folks, the capitalist thought of the day is about resiliency, folks. Capitalism encourages resiliency. It understands that life must change and innovate all the time. Life evolves. Life evolves. And so we must evolve and change with it continuously. We have to be alert to changes and change with them. And capitalism is the only system that leaves the human mind free enough to be able to do that, and the body free, human body free enough, and property free enough for people to be able to adjust to the changes that are happening and innovate and improve upon nature. Everything you see around you, folks, which so many cynics out there equate with the artifice of human life, that say we are so distant from nature. No, it is our nature to improve upon nature. That's right. A cave was an improvement upon nature. Domesticating fire was an improvement upon nature. Skyscrapers are an improvement upon nature. Air conditioning is an improvement upon nature. Warm clothing is an improvement upon nature. Central heating is an improvement upon nature. Microwave ovens are an improvement upon nature. My cell phone is an improvement upon nature. Eyeglasses are an improvement upon nature. In every respect, capitalism has provided a world that is compatible with human life. And if, as the leftists say, the world is somehow dying and going down the tubes, you need capitalism even more to innovate and adjust to the problems that the universe will throw at us, because it's the only system capable of doing it. That is my capitalist thought for the day. What do you think of them apples, baby?
I don't know. I don't really like apples in general, but I can stomach them. So, but that was gold. What you just said, that was great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks. So we're about out of time for today. So join us tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday. Yes, join us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat place, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about current events from a capitalist perspective. Sometimes we might even go into philosophy and ethics because, hey, they're part of capitalism. Please remember to hit the like button before you leave because that does good things to the algorithm. Remember to watch The Rational Egoist, just for your own benefit, just for your own IQ's benefit, for your own happiness. I suggest that you watch it, and I suggest you keep watching this show for your own happiness too, because we are essentially upbeat, positive, optimistic people, even though we've been saying bad things about Trump.
I don't know. One guy here called me abrasive earlier. It kind of hurt my feelings. I'm a little sad about this.
Me likey abrasive. Me likey abrasive. So we have to live with each other, Mike. And you know what?
We don't.
Yes, we do.
We do not live with each other.
Don't lie. You're in the next room. You know it. Don't lie. No. He's very afraid of when I say things like companion, when I say things like we have to live with each other. He thinks these are Freudian slips for some kind of sexual relationship, which is not happening, by the way. Just letting everybody know. He doth protesteth too much is probably what everybody's thinking.
Reaction formation.
Anyway, folks, join us here tomorrow. And between now and tomorrow, will you do me a favor? Will you please check your premises? If you do, you're going to join us because you're going to find capitalism is the greatest system in the world. All right.
And no trolling.
Yeah, no trolling. Peace.